Welcome back on episode 92 of the Pitchside podcast here. I'm your host, the HOD of the PSP. Like, share, comment on the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, enable notifications to receive all the updates from these episodes of the Pitchside podcast, and of course the match recaps and all the content on the channel. Follow us on social media. I'm at PSP on Twitter, Pitchside Pod on Instagram, and you can listen to us on Spotify, Google Podcast, or any other platform. Join us for more, and you are welcome. Of course, it's the return of the Champions League this weekend, this midweek really, and the second leg of the round of 16. But before that, we're going to kick things off talking about some football from Monday, what happened in the last 24 hours. And we start from the Stamford Bridge in the Premier League with Chelsea defeating Everton and managing to defeat them 2-0 in a brilliant game for one Kai Havertz. He played really well. He didn't necessarily score really, but in terms of creating opportunities and all of that, he really managed to hold his own. Really, he didn't score, but the opportunity where he was about to score was considered an own goal for Everton. It was for Ben Godfrey on his own net, but it was a brilliant game overall. I think for Chelsea, it was as dominating a performance as Chelsea had all season. This is the 11th game now under Tuchel. They go undefeated, 9 wins and 2 draws only, and it's an incredible record for them at the moment. And not just that, but it's also another clean sheet, so it shows how defensively they improved. Thomas Tuchel seemed to have his 3 in the back locked down in some way. The thing is that he's probably rotating in the 4 in the middle and also the 3 up front, starting with Werner, Hudson-Odoi, and Havertz, starting with Hudson-Odoi a little bit deeper and a little bit going forward than usual, starting him alongside Werner behind Havertz. It was a weird kind of situation, but eventually it gave a lot of room, I think, for movement for the likes of Alonso and Reece James starting. I think it's pretty offensive lineup if you think about it. Kovacic and Jorginho's run in the middle, so it's pretty offensive lineup from Thomas Tuchel. He wanted to win, he wanted to get 3 points, and he did. Chelsea, of course, was an important victory that keeps them in the conversation of the top 4, obviously, and leaps over everyone to get that 4th spot now. 50 points, 3 points behind Leicester City, 4 points behind United. They could end up in 2nd place after all. I predicted that really in my predictions early on in the season, but I guess we will wait and see. Speaking of the top 4 places, and we're still in the Premier League, West Ham managed to defeat Leeds United 2-0. The early goals from Jesse Lingard and Greg Dawson in the 20th minute and the 27th minute means that West Ham are still in the fight for the top 4 spots. They are 5th now behind Chelsea, 48 points, the 2 London side, and of course they have a big game against Manchester United coming in the weekend to determine whether they're going to be probably defining themselves as top 4 contenders or not. Of course, the game, I think, was not exactly West Ham's best offensive outing, not exactly a lot of opportunities when it comes to the target, but definitely they picked their moment expertly and they knew when to hit and when to attack. Set piece defending was once again a problem for Leeds United. They conceded from it the 2nd goal for Craig Dawson, and eventually, we'll see if West Ham are truly a top 4 contender or not. Probably the test is going to be against Man United this weekend as well, and probably in the next couple of weeks when they face the other contenders for the top 4 as well. Moving on to Italy, of course, and Inter, of course, defeated Atalanta 1-0. It was an important victory for the Nerazzurri in the round 26 of the Serie A, and a victory that, as I said in the review, was not deserved for the terms of how they played the game, but I think well deserved of the way they defended really well, in particular against Atalanta, who dominated, who sort of neutralized them up front. Inter didn't create a lot of chances when it comes to the target, but still they had enough in them to capitalize on Atalanta's one mistake and score the only goal in the game thanks to Milan Skriniar, which shows you how good I think Atalanta did when it comes to neutralizing the danger of the likes of Romelu Lukaku and Lautaro Martinez. Not a lot of shots from Inter. One shot on target was the goal. Atalanta had more possession, had more opportunities, but in the end, one mistake was definitely costly. And on the other end, of course, they weren't that effective in scoring, but they played a decent game, I think, and they should have been fine to continue the season and finish in a very comfortable position, I think, in that top 4 spots. Let's turn the page now and go to the biggest competition, of course, in Europe, the UEFA Champions League, and it's the return of the second leg for the round of 16, and we're going to be starting from Turin, and it is Juventus Porto in the second leg. I mean, this is a game where, Juventus are all about. It sounds like all about Cristiano Ronaldo or not for Juve. Like, it's whether him or they don't do it, whether him that they don't make it into the quarterfinals. And if last year's experience is anything to go by, even if he scores and he does it, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, because Juventus was still flub things on the other end. But of course, we're not going to enter into that discussion, because they still believe that the refereeing decision for Lyon's penalty was bad in the early goings and what have you. So there's a lot of... It's a bee nest, basically, to get into when we talk about Juventus' exit last season. But the known thing is that they failed to win in the first leg. So that is, I think, a clear indication. And again, the fact that it's a passable deficit or an overcomable deficit, if that's an even word can exist, the fact that they could overcome that deficit, in theory, quite easily against Porto, and they lost only 2-1. And thank God they lost only 2-1, because in that first leg they were horrific. And Porto, whenever they were going forward, they found spaces somehow, and they played up front really, really well. And they had, it had a lot of dangerous chances against them in the first leg. Of course, they had a lot of opportunities to score despite having less possession. But obviously, the first half was, I think, one of the most horrendous halves Juventus ever played. It started, of course, with the sort of the back pass mistake from Rodrigo Bentancur, and from then I think things went really, really bad. Conceding a goal in either start of the either half is a problem. And, it could happen again in Turin. Like, there's no guarantees that it won't happen again in Turin. Of course, with no Bentancur sidelined because of COVID, of course, there's going to be no Dybala, there's going to be no De Ligt, no Danilo as well for the accumulation of the yellow cards in that game. So potentially, you need to do a lot of, so you're going to be doing a lot of rotation, Andrea Pirlo, and obviously the fact that he rested Ronaldo in the weekend against Lazio, although that game is important in the league, he still rested Ronaldo, so he knows that he's putting all of his eggs in the basket of the Champions League, and he knows that he needs the Champions League, not to save his season literally, because they still have the cup to win, but I think to save face, I think, for the brand of Juventus, because I don't think that Cristiano Ronaldo would take another year where he doesn't get to the Champions League final, where he doesn't get past the quarterfinal stage of the Champions League. It happened in 2019, it happened last year, and if it happens this year, no guarantees really that Juventus is, going to be keeping Cristiano Ronaldo, although in disguise, probably that is going to be better to allow them to probably buy a lot of good players, a lot of other good players, to build a new generation for their team around them with Andrea Pirlo, because this is his first job, and this is his first job as a manager, like literally his first job as manager. So I don't think that people are expecting him to win the Champions League or to actually go through to the final of the Champions League and challenge for it. I don't think that they are quite justified, really, even with the fact that they have Cristiano Ronaldo. So it comes down to whether if Juventus exiting is going to be good for Juventus themselves in the near future, because for some people it looks like Cristiano is a dead weight in Juventus. Not, of course, the fact he doesn't play well, but it's the dead weight that doesn't allow Juventus to just go forward normally about their business, because it's all about Ronaldo, because the people would look at Juventus and say, okay, their favourites because they have Cristiano Ronaldo. But the fact is, the cast around Ronaldo isn't exactly that great. like we talk about this and we say it about Barcelona. We say that Messi plays basically on his own at Barcelona. Talk about Cristiano Ronaldo playing on his own at Juventus, and even so, Cristiano Ronaldo himself doesn't contribute a lot sometimes to Juventus like Messi does to Barcelona. Like when he doesn't score, he rarely gives you assists. Really, he doesn't move a lot, and because of course I think of his age. I mean, quite frankly, is a physical specimen, so he's staying always fit, but I don't think that for his age he moves a lot around and out. And when you play him and Morata, really, it's a centre partnership, which is going to be probably the case today, because no chance is going to start with Kulusevski, I think, in that striking partnership up front. I think it's pretty ineffective. It's going to be pretty futile from Juventus to start with him and Morata, because that's what looks to be the case, though. I think the issue is going to be as well in the midfield. Who's going to be starting in the midfield? You don't have, if you don't have Bentancur, and Arthur is still injured, so you probably won't be playing him, or at the very least, you're going to have to play him, set him on the bench for the first half or so. Who's going to be your midfield? And this was a persistent problem. Like, this is a problem that continued from the Sarri era up to now until the Pirlo era. And you talk about, the players that you have in the midfield. You have the likes of Rabiot, the likes of Ramsey, the likes of McKennie, all good on the ball, and all well and truly good passes of the ball, and they could contribute up front when you dominate the game and you have possession. But I don't think that all of them off the ball are really good. Probably I would argue that only Weston McKennie is good off the ball, as good he is on the ball, as good as he off the ball as well. The others, Rabiot, Ramsey, Bentancur, I don't really see them as very good off the ball, and I think, watching any match of Juve this season, you will notice how much ball they give away sometimes. Just watch any Juventus match this season, around 70 to 80% of them, and watch at least the first 30 to 35 minutes, and watch how many times Juventus give the ball away in the midfield, for those guys in particular, like Rabiot and Bentancur. And I'm not saying that these are bad, I'm not saying they are bad players, but the fact is, you need even better midfielders, you need even more incentive midfielders, you need more quick midfielders, quick thinking midfielders, supportive midfielders, and this option, I think, Juventus only have now in McKennie, and, occasionally they have in Rabiot, but mostly they have in McKennie, so McKennie starting is a must in this game. Although McKennie starting again, as I mentioned, is a must in that game, because they need to have some balance in that midfield. And since he started in the last time out, he needs to start again today, because he was rested as well against Lazio. So you understand the priorities here for Juventus. For Porto, they are coming off the back of, some not so good form since the win against Juventus, in fact, defeating the Ritmo in the league, the draw against Sporting, of course, in the derby. Then you have Braga losing to Braga in the Copa de Portugal, or the Taça de Portugal as it's called, of course. They lost to them in the semi-final, 3-2. So they're not exactly a defensive side. Like, you look at it, it's not exactly a defensive side. However, they're doing well in the league. I think they're doing enough well. So they are second. They're going to be qualifying to the Champions League. The league seems to be quite settled in Portugal towards Sporting. But again, they could defend really, really well, Porto, and we could see somewhat of a, defense versus attack kind of thing. And I don't fancy Juventus in these ones, because if anything, really Juventus needs someone to go at them, expose themselves in the back, and then Juventus could break, and then Juventus could find spaces for Cristiano to run, for Morata to run, for Dybala to run if he was playing, but he wouldn't. And of course the likes of Kulusevski, McKennie and Rabiot, all those runners in the midfield as well, could find space if the team gives them space. But if Porto doesn't give them space, and if it boils down to an attack versus defense kind of thing, I really don't fancy Juventus going through. I might fancy them winning, but I don't fancy them going through. It could be 2-1, it could be 1-1, it could be the kind of result that, doesn't allow them to qualify to the next round. That is, I think, my sort of boldest prediction, I think, for this game. Generally, Juventus could secure the win, but a potential exit could be on the cards for them. Again, if it boils down to attack versus defense, Juventus are not going to be qualifying because they just don't like that style of play, and with those kind of players, it doesn't look good at all. From Turin, we're moving on and to Dortmund in the Westphalian. Of course, Borussia Dortmund hosting Sevilla in the second leg of the Champions League, and I think it's official now. We can say that, Borussia Dortmund could be on the way to losing the top 4 spots in the Bundesliga. So probably at the very best they will be in the Europa League next season. After their loss against Bayern Munich 4-2 in the Classica, they were going on some decent form really. Before that, 5 games undefeated, including 4 wins and 4, I think, emphatic wins, if you want to say. Of course, in the cup with great performances, most well defended, I think, for the most part. Even the victory against Sevilla in the first leg away from home was well defended. They started strongly. They played the first half an hour really good on the front foot. They had opportunities. They scored 3 goals. Haaland was the man of the hour, scoring a brace. And then, of course, Dortmund dropped and expectedly defended really well. Didn't allow Sevilla a lot of room to work for, specifically in the second half. They really didn't allow them a lot of room to move around in the second half. Didn't allow them opportunities to score, and the one mistake that really I think could be costly eventually was the one from the set piece. Meunier, too much ball watching. I mean, he was introduced as a sub really in that game for Morey, and that shows you, I think, how ineffective he could be and how bad his deal could be. And let's not talk about the pass that he missed against Bayern Munich in the Classic, and where he should have squared it to Haaland, but he didn't. And he missed the opportunity for a 3-0 lead on Dortmund in that game that could have been different. Like in theory, again, could have been different. So, Borussia Dortmund come into this game. I mean, thankfully for them, they're not going to be missing Haaland. Thankfully for them, Haaland is playing after a bit of a scare in their Classic, of course, but they're still not going to have the likes of Jadon Sancho, Axel Witsel, Rafael Guerreiro, and Giovanni Reina are a big doubt for this game. Could potentially miss out, so you're probably going to have to make up with, Royce and Brandt maybe, or Royce and Thorgan Hazard once again. And Thorgan Hazard didn't show exactly. Didn't give a lot of hope for Borussia Dortmund's fans why he should be starting in Sevilla now. Is Sevilla, or are Sevilla the favourites? No, absolutely, but no chance of the imagination. Sevilla are favourites in this one. Obviously, it sways in Dortmund's favour. I think Dortmund's probably going to be, potentially they could settle things off for good in this time, and they have a big opportunity to settle things off for good this time. I mean, they're coming from a bad period, Sevilla. Like 3 losses on the bounce, only scoring 1 goal, and those losses were embarrassing. Like, each one of them is embarrassing in its own way. The first one against Barcelona, the fact that he didn't play a lot, like Barcelona didn't play a lot, didn't do much in that game, and they still scored 2 goals and they still won. And you have, also you have the loss against Barcelona in the cup as well, which was a different element altogether, where they just sat deep and sat back and didn't do anything. And they also missed a golden opportunity in the penalty late on to score and to equalise and to give themselves hope in the rest of the game, even kill the game outright on Barcelona. And then, of course, there's the loss against Elche last weekend, which was also embarrassing in its own ways. They came pretty exhausted, pretty knackered from those 2 games. I mean, morally, psychologically, physically. I mean, the pedigree of Sevilla as a Europa League winning team probably showing in this week. Like, I mean, unfortunately, I want to say this, but for all of the good players that they have, for all the qualities that they have, for all of the good shape that they have, and the tactics that Julian Lopetegui applies, and he applies them, for the most part, really well. I think their pedigree in the Europa League doesn't necessarily translate into the Champions League, and obviously it didn't this season, because they had some bad results in the group stage, and they had some, horrific performances outside of the group stage. I mean, their performance against Dortmund wasn't really that good. It was very, very uninspiring against a side that knew that they should defend them and sit deep, because Sevilla are not the most mobile team. And I said it in the review for Barcelona, and I said in the review for the first game against Borussia Dortmund, really, that Sevilla are a side that likes slow teams to face. They don't have exactly the paciest of strikers or the paciest of wingers in Suso, Oliver Torres or Lucas Ocampos, although they are really, really good, but they don't have enough pace to break the quick teams. And they don't have enough pace as well to cover the defensive runs or the offensive runs that they do and backtrack into the defense, because they don't do that. If you see Suso and Lucas Ocampos, you don't see them, going back and forth a lot. You see them either in one situation or the other. You see them either attacking a lot or defending a lot. And against Dortmund, they started, of course, with those two, and they played on. Campos wasn't available, of course, so they started with Papu Gomez on that left-hand side, which is another problem on its own, really, in terms of how tactically they could manage the game for Sevilla. Then you have Suso, who's someone who is good, again, when he can give you the right pass, he can give you the right shot from outside the box, he can give you a good shooting option, a good passing option, a good set-piece playing option, but I don't think, as far as wingers are concerned, he's not exactly someone who would say, oh, I'm going to use him to break teams down, I'm going to use his pace to run behind. I don't think that could apply on Suso, or apply on Papu Gomez. And at his age, Papu Gomez in particular, he should be playing his normal position in number 10, because Rakitic isn't doing that position, good. Isn't doing that position any favour for Sevilla. The players behind him, Juan Jordan and Fernando, they work tirelessly in that midfield, and we really need to give them credit. And I think Juan Jordan is one of the best midfielders in the world at the moment, and he deserves a lot of credit than he does. But overall, they're not exactly that fast, Sevilla. And they don't also have the paciest of fullbacks. Jesus Navas seems to be, running on fumes every time he plays. And although he still has quality crosses and he could still deliver a final pass in the final third, it doesn't really help when you have a lack of pace in your side. When you have a lack of pace in the midfield, when you have a lack of pace in your fullbacks, probably it's fine. But when you have a lack of pace in the midfield and in your attack as well, and the strikers for Sevilla are not exactly that pacey as well to break things down, the likes of De Jong and Nasiri, so it's going to be a problem. And in a game where Sevilla are not going to be demanded to attack from the first minute, that's not going to happen, forget about it. Borussia Dortmund are the ones that are going to be attacking and demanded to attack and forced to attack in the first minute, because they need to settle things down. Don't get twisted and think, oh, Sevilla are going to be going all guns blazing, looking for the equaliser, or equaliser on aggregate, of course, and looking for the goal early to try and settle things down. No, they wouldn't. It's going to be Borussia Dortmund looking for that. Borussia Dortmund are going to be looking for the final blow. When they do achieve that, and when they do score the first goal, and when they do give that final blow to Sevilla, then, and only then, Dortmund could sit deep, and you would watch Sevilla, how they're going to be ineffective, and you watch them how they will not be able to break down teams. That is what I think is going to be happening in that game. For Borussia Dortmund, they should defend really well, and I think if they have the opportunity to start the game strong and score 2 goals and 3 goals, and if Haaland is 100% fit, and of course he's playing, there's no real... He's playing, obviously, because he's their only hope in this one. Probably, a big point of that Classico was the fact that he was out because of injury, and it changed a lot of things really in that game in midway through the second half. So he's their only chance. If he's starting and he has opportunities to score 2 or 3 goals, I don't think he would miss. That's one. And second, that is going to be really, really good scenario for Borussia Dortmund, because if they defend better this time, and they just defend well this time, this is not by any stretch of imagination. So if they defend really well, I don't think they will have any problems in settling the score and settling the deal and qualifying to the quarterfinals of the Champions League, and maybe having a really decent run of that competition. Who knows? Because it doesn't look at the moment, for all things considered, that they're going to be getting anything from the league in terms of the top 4 spots. So that's it for me for this episode. Thank you for watching / listening. I was about the HOD of the PSP. Like, share, comment on the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, enable notifications to receive all the updates from the podcast episodes, and help us on the way to the first K. Of course, there's Liverpool, Leipzig, PSG, Barcelona tomorrow coming on in the podcast episode. Follow us on social media, site PSP on Twitter, page SitePod on Instagram, and you can listen to this on Spotify, Google Podcast, or any other platform. And until next time, I was your boy, the HOD of the PSP. Stay safe, take care, and goodbye.